Hi everybody, welcome to our first podcast in our energy domain. In this one we're going to explore cellular energetics and look a little bit more at the idea of what the theories are and the relevant laws behind energy in cells. So here are our big questions. We have the constraints of the universe, so how we get around that as living organisms, and how we can maintain order even with entropy increasing within the universe. So let's jump right in, man. Okay, so we've got two relevant laws that we need to look at, the two laws of thermodynamics. And these two laws are vital because we have to, as living systems and living organisms, our cells, everything about us, have to adhere to these laws. So we'll start with the first one. And in the first law of thermodynamics, matter and energy cannot, please stress this enough, be created or destroyed. They are transferred. We mentioned this in the last podcast as well, that there is simply processing of matter and energy. Okay, so something to remember in that little asterisk here, there are a few exceptions, okay, which for us really don't matter in that. Okay, so cellular, stellar fusion, stuff like that, things we aren't really aware of too much yet and with its regard to life. So just keep that in mind as we kind of roll through. So we have a few aspects of this first law that we're going to look at as we deal with free energy. So in first, we know that as organisms, just the ability to do anything, there is a need for energy, and as a result, we are releasing heat. Our energy comes from, original source is the sun, comes in, we take the bonds that we have there, those are then used for our cells to do our work and in turn make our organisms do our work. So as we take in carbon dioxide, or take in oxygen, use those chemical energies, we're going to release CO2 and water out into the atmosphere. So this idea of work is anything that requires atoms to be moved anywhere. Basically everything. Everything. Two main forms of energy that are necessary in living things. We have kinetic and potential. Kinetic is the energy of motion, while as potential is stored energy. So when you're hanging out on the dock, okay, you have potential energy there. The motion and the movement, you're going to have kinetic energy at that point, and both are very useful and both contribute quite a bit. So as you go from one, you're going to have more of potential, less kinetic. There is always some kinetic energy in the fact that molecules are constantly moving. As they move more, you're going to release that energy and transfer that energy into a different format. So here's where we get into that idea of free energy and these types of reactions. So we are going to look at Gibbs free energy as we go through. So the measurement of the amount of useful energy that a system has, the amount that's available for the cell to do work. So major biological source of energy comes from taking atoms in one form, rearranging them into another, and hopefully being able to release a certain amount of energy that can be used. So as we look at the change of energy, we have our free energy. H is enthalpy. This is the amount of energy that is stored within the substance, so the amount that's available that's there. You have temperature and then the change in the entropy. So this equation is something that we're going to be using to help us understand with reactions how that could factor into what's going to go on in a cell. Okay, so with Gibbs free energy, an exergonic reaction. Okay, energy is released during an exergonic reaction, and they are spontaneous. So you can see we have our reactants, you get a release of energy, you get products out of it. The amount of energy that's released is less than zero. That change is negative, okay, in the process of the reaction. So it's converted from a higher energy arrangement to a lower energy arrangement. It happens spontaneously. Once it's initiated, it rolls. And just to keep in mind, spontaneous doesn't necessarily mean super duper fast. It just means once it's going, it's going. And the change in the free energy is negative because we are releasing energy. Conversely, an endergonic reaction is going to go from a lower energy state to a higher energy arrangement, and in the process of that arrangement, we are going to create a change that is greater than zero. Okay, these are not going to occur spontaneously. They have to be, there's energy that has to be required to be put into it, and that change is positive in the free energy that there is because we are increasing the amount of the way that the energy is arranged, increasing the amount that's stored within. So systems in biology and biological living systems are going to use these exergonic reactions to provide the free energy that's necessary for the endergonic reactions, which kind of makes sense, right? I've got to create, release energy, take that, and hopefully store it up somewhere. So the more available free energy, the higher the G, the less stable, the greater the work capacity. So when we have spontaneous change, right, free energy of the system decreases, system becomes more stable, release of energy can then be harnessed, can then be useful in order to do work. As a result, you get less free energy, you get more stability, more work capacity. So kind of cool. So systems aren't the only things that require energy to function, and that need to convert energy in order to work, right? But we are an example of it. So that's just something that we're just not the only thing that needs that, okay? So in the second law of thermodynamics, here is where basically systems require energy input or you're going to get this constant move to a more disordered system. So any closed system will move towards that maximum state of entropy as it goes. There's the law. It's true for the universe as a whole. Okay, we go from where there's less entropy to where there's more, expanding out. Portions of the universe that we have still can operate as an open system, and energy can be used to decrease then the open system's entropy. So let's take a kind of a little bit of a closer look here at what it means to be an open versus a closed system. So life is extraordinarily ordered. We have to be in order to function. So we use energy, we convert to a power, basically to power everything that we do. In doing so, we decrease the overall entropy, or kind of slow it, and then this process then increases the entropy of the surroundings. Okay, so we're trying to maintain order. So with this, we require energy input for life to continue to exist. So highly ordered systems use energy input to maintain, to increase order, to make sure that there's stability. And without that, stability happens. So an open versus a closed system, okay? Closed systems, they tend towards the absence of free energy. When you close it off, you might start like it's, like we see here, right? So we start with a really high, you have a ton of available free energy. You can see that it's negative. As the water spills down, we light the light bulb. But eventually, because it's a closed system, you will reach a state of equilibrium. And in which case, as soon as equilibrium is reached, it's done. There's no more energy. The change in G is 0. You have no more available energy. The bulb doesn't light up. Okay, so this is generally pretty dull. Whereas in an open system, we can maintain sort of that constant, because if we have an open system, we won't basically reach equilibrium as long as the system is constantly receiving an input and constantly outputting something. So in this case, we have an open hydroelectric system, constant input of water, constantly spinning down, constantly outputting the water at the end will continue to make the turbine move. Okay, will continue to light it up. And then you can have multi-step systems doing the same thing. As long as that system is constantly put in and as long as it's coming out, you will maintain. Okay, and it will continue and you will keep that free energy rolling. Okay, because in all senses, equilibrium equals death, right? Because then there's no more energy. There's no more free energy. That's it. Systems are done. Boom. Okay, we're toast. What can I say? All right, so cellular energy theory. Let's get right into it. ATP, we heard about it. We know it. We get it. Adenosine triphosphate. Short term, our dollar bills, right? That's the dollar bill. We're going to cash in that 50, get it changed over to dollars. We can then use it as short-term energy release. Okay, this is our molecule of choice. Per second, we make tens of millions of these. This is like ridiculous, right? Okay, so here it is. ATP, huge molecule, huge energy stored in the phosphates. As we pop up a phosphate, we release it. And generally, those are pretty unstable. That's why it's really easy to break it off, release some of that energy. So we have a lot more free energy released when the bonds between them are broken, okay? And then that's required for the cell to do its thing, okay? So yay, energy, right? We release that. This is obviously very useful for the work our cells do, necessary for active transport proteins in order to change their shape, to move those phosphate groups help make things happen, right? So transport work. Okay, that helps. Literally mechanical work is part of moving the vesicle through a cell is going to be using ATP down as it moves down those microtubules within the cell. Okay, so really important little molecule here that we have. So the metabolism piece is going to help to maintain our constant supply of ATP. So as ATP gets broken down into ADP, we then have to input energy back in order to build ATP back up. So the energy that's there from exergonic reactions, those energy releasing reactions, gets then utilized to help build ATP up, and then we can go and do our endergonic reactions and send some out. Okay, so the idea of metabolism, that's referring to that total, that whole sum of all of the reactions that take place in an organism. So the energy from a catabolic reaction, like cell respiration, powers the synthesis of ATP from ADP. ATP, okay, and other types of these molecules, we have some others, is then used to power then the anabolic reactions that require chemical energy to actually happen. So in this, we can have a process known as reaction coupling, and this is going to refer to linking exergonic reactions directly with an actual cellular process. So if an endergonic process requires less free energy, then the exergonic is then going to produce, then an exergonic process, releases. Coupling the reactions can allow for more efficiency and get us an overall greater negative change in G. So let's take a peek at what I mean here. So here's some ideas of coupling that occur. So just take a second and kind of mull this over in your brain a little bit and see how the coupling actually promotes a greater delta G that is created. All right, so reactions of kinetics. Okay, here is where this is going to lead us into all of our enzyme talk. Reaction profile. Reactions require an input of energy. This is called the activation energy to make the breaking of a chemical bond and make them more energetically favorable as they transition from one form to the other. The relationship that happens between these products is what determines whether the reaction is going to be exergonic or endergonic. Is it going to have a positive change in G, or is it going to have a negative? Here's where our catalysts come into play. So these catalysts are going to allow these reactions to still occur, to occur at the same amount of time, but not require as much addition of free energy in order to happen. And the catalysts are reusable. Hugely important. We can use them, reuse them all we want. For us, those are our enzymes. So in all biological systems, that's what's going to be important. So with that, make sure that you can do these things, okay? And then from here, we're really going to dig right in to getting further into how cells process and use the energy that they need, and get into how enzymes function for that, and then really get into some cool stuff. So have a great night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.